Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. It's my pleasure today to be here with a elected official that I really admire, really respect. Over the years, I've covered him quite a bit, and like any elected official in town, we've had our moments, but I have a lot of respect for the body of his work. Gregg Hart, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. It is a fabulous day, and it's a really fun opportunity to have a conversation with you, Josh, and your listeners. It's a great forum. I love listening. I'm a fan, and can't wait to have our conversation.
Well, thank you, Gregg. Looking forward to talking to you. You made news recently because you announced that you were going to make a run for California State Assembly, and this is a big move for you. You're somebody who's always been talked about seeking some sort of a state office over the years, and you were on the city council for so long, and then you were elected to the board of supervisors, and I guess now's your time. Right now you've decided to do it and take a chance, and I just want to sort of start there. Why do you want to run for assembly? What's appealing about this position?
Well, it wasn't an easy decision because I really value the opportunity I have to serve our community on the Board of Supervisors. We have a wonderful group of colleagues that work together in a unique way. I have never experienced this before to the degree that it's in place at the Board of Supervisors. Folks are active listeners. They're really trying to hear each other and trying to move public policy forward to benefit every resident of Santa Barbara County. So it's a great situation, and I was very content with this job, very excited about running for re-election and continuing to serve. But this is a unique opportunity. There's an open seat in the state assembly, and there is no incumbent there. And the district is almost exactly this county of Santa Barbara, with a little bit of South San Luis Obispo County and the Nipomo area. So I know this geographic area really well. I've lived here almost my whole entire life. And I feel like, experiences that I have learned by being a local elected official can be part of the conversation in Sacramento in a way that can have influence. There's going to be a tremendous amount of turnover in the state legislature over the next 4 years. There's just many legislators who are hitting that 12-year term limit clock and will be leaving the institution. So there's an opportunity, to really have a clear, strong voice as a sort of the new generation of leadership in Sacramento. And I think I have something to add to that conversation, and I'm excited about it.
You obviously struggled with whether to run. It was a tough decision because you are very popular, in the district. You probably could have enjoyed a long career at the Board of Supervisors for as long as you wanted. Of course, you never know who's going to run or whatever, but you were comfortable, and you were recently elected. So I imagine you've got to weigh that, right? That consideration with, all right, I'm going to take a chance now, and this is a larger district. So you're going to have to appeal to people who are up in North County and, some people that you may not have had much interaction with in the past. Can you talk to me a little bit about sort of wrestling with whether to just sort of stay or whether to make that jump? Because, we know, right? We know that it's much easier to run when you can clear the field and you have a clearer path. When there's stiff competition, it's like, is now the right time? So can you talk to me about sort of what was going through your head in that struggle?
Yeah, I think I was looking at it from two different lenses. One is, my personal life. What's that going to be like to commute to Sacramento back and forth and, sort of ramp up the intensity of my lifestyle personally. And, that's a big deal. It's a big change. But I personally feel like I have another gear. I feel like, particularly in the last 5 years or so, I have just gotten a big surge of energy. I feel the clicking clock of time and want to make an impact. And this unique opportunity presented itself. And I know I can do the work. I've started my political career 40 years ago to this year in 1982 as a student volunteer for Jack O'Connell when he ran for the state assembly for the first time. And Jack was an incredible mentor, still a great friend, somebody who's supporting me in this race. In fact, he reached out to me and said, you really should think about doing this. You would be great in the legislature. And this moment in history is really important too. It's important at the County Board of Supervisors. It's just important at city councils around the county, and it's important in the state legislature. The California state legislature, California is the 5th largest economy in the world. And being part of the state legislature, having a voice to represent our community in that venue is an extraordinary opportunity. And I don't take that lightly, but I'm pretty experienced in public service and have done a lot of different things. So I think I will come to the office, ready to go and ready to make a contribution. And that's my hope. Obviously, there's a campaign that I have to succeed in, but I've run campaigns before, and I've spoken with Gabe Escobedo, who's my opponent, and we're going to have a really high-level, high-character contest. And I'm prepared to work really hard and be successful. And then look forward to serving with Senator Monique Limon and Assemblyman Steve Bennett in the legislature, who both have endorsed me, along with Congressman Salud Carball.
Yeah, there's so much to be said for that experience and that wisdom that you bring to politics. Gabe Escobedo, you mentioned him, he's running, and his trajectory is like this, and he's going to do well in a lot of fields, and I'm sure you remember being that age, that young, and having sort of ambition and ideas, and it's an exciting time. And then here you are now with all this years behind you, and you just sort of see it with this clarity and this sense of urgency. You talk about the time ticking, right? And I know what that's all about too. It's like, I better do what I want to do now, because we may not have these opportunities going forward. Let's talk about your time sort of getting started in politics. I'm going to gush a little bit, but people watching, I don't care if Gregg Hart, if you're a Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter to me. These comments are prefaced on as a journalist who covers a multitude of elected officials. And as a journalist, I really like somebody like you, because you do your research. And when you go up there and you talk about the issues, you explain them, and you're specific and you're knowledgeable. And so a journalist just kind of has to know a little bit about everything, enough to pursue the story. And then if they want to go deeper, then they have to educate themselves more to report that. And so we rely on people to be able to tell those stories through. And I've always just really had a admiration for how prepared you are when you come into these meetings. You never wasted a moment to talk on the mic. Every time you talk, there's something to be said, and not a whole lot of grandstanding, like you're talking about content. So can you talk a little bit about just what's your approach? Like, why did you go into public service? And, why is it so important to you to go in there with a perspective and a direction and knowledge and research? I've covered a lot of elected officials, and you're definitely in a league of your own with just like a handful that I've had the opportunity to cover in Santa Barbara and San Jose and the Bay Area. So can you just talk a little bit about what's your approach when you come at these meetings and these issues?
Well, thank you for saying those wonderful things. I really treasure your recognition of how hard I work at this job, because I do. And, but I love it. And it is not something that I have to turn a switch off or on. I'm kind of on this job 24/7, and I live in this community. I'm deeply connected to the people, that are my neighbors and friends and people I don't know. I want Santa Barbara and Santa Barbara County to be the best possible place it can be for me and for my children and for all the working families in Santa Barbara County. So there's a lot to do. And I've been very fortunate to serve in a lot of different capacities. I was on the Planning Commission before I was on the council. Governor Davis appointed me to the California Coastal Commission. I was the deputy director for the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, working on regional government issues. I ran a child care center for 20 years, and now I serve on the Board of Supervisors. So I've got a lot of life experience in a lot of different areas. And in each one of those steps along the path, I've learned about different issues and become deeply enmeshed in them. And I do my homework. I read everything that's prepared. I read 3-4 newspapers a day. I ask people questions. I have a naturally curious mind. I'm one of those people who goes to arts and lectures to learn about things that I don't know things about. I literally pick things that I don't understand so that I can learn more about it. Just a very eclectic reader. One of the greatest gifts my father gave me, he was the library director for the city and county of Santa Barbara. And so he was an avid reader, and he instilled a love for the libraries and books in me at a really young age, and was bringing home books all the time. And I was reading, in great things at a young age, and I've just kind of sustained that through my whole life. And so I do feel like I'm very prepared, and I don't think I need to say a lot when I speak on the microphone, but I do need to be precise and clear. And the point is to communicate with people so they can understand what I'm thinking and why I have come to a conclusion. And I think that's the most effective way to be persuasive, to be clear, transparent, direct, honest, and I hope people listen when I talk. And I've been successful in so far, and I'm just going to continue doing that. So I appreciate that you recognize it. When I was chair of the Board of Supervisors during the first year of the COVID pandemic, I was thrust in the role of being the communicator for the community about this scary, overwhelming thing. And, the principle that I used to guide me through that process was to always be honest, always be clear, always be transparent, to say when I didn't know something, and to not blame people for the circumstances, but to try and bring people together so that we could get through that. And, I'm very proud of that moment in my career, and I think it was successful. Obviously, the pandemic has gotten more complicated, more difficult as it's gone on longer, but at least in our county, we kept our political leadership together on the same page, bringing people together. And that's a significant achievement.
Yeah, you definitely have this ability to shift gears in the moment. And I've seen the range of your emotions on the boards. You go from explanatory. There's a time when you need to be firm. There's a time when you just say, no, this is how it is, and we need to stop talking about this. We're just going to go here because this is the direction we're headed. And how do we frame this policy in the best way? I mean, you have this ability to sort of storytell, but then also lead at the same time, but be inclusive, so it's really a rare quality. And, I'm sure, what I'm talking about. You have this appeal to conservatives too. I don't want to out you here or get you in trouble with everybody, but conservatives like you, the John Davies of the world, they respect you for your ability to understand and process and then make your decision. And so, that's something I've noticed over the years. You're not as polarizing. Let's go back to high school. Were you the smartest kid in the class? Did you figure it out in college? What was Gregg Hart like as sort of a youngster when it comes to being able to consume the knowledge and the information?
Well, I wasn't a nerdy kid. I've always been an athlete, so I played sports in high school, but I wasn't super focused on one particular sport. I kind of bounced around, played football, played volleyball, played tennis, even did some wrestling and stuff. So I'm very competitive, and I like to win. And I know that to win, you got to be prepared. And so, taking those life lessons from coaches and other athletes and applying them to public service makes sense. This business is competitive. You got to get elected in order to make a difference. And then you have to persuade people to work together as a team and accomplish a common goal. So there's a bunch of overlap. Rusty Fairley was, a coach when we were colleagues on the city council. I was a student of his at Santa Barbara City Council College. Jack Sanford was my tennis coach at Santa Barbara City College. People who had influential impact on my life, and a lot of professors too at Santa Barbara City College as well. John Kay, Bob Kassir, other folks like that. Peter Hasland, who's still a friend, and John too is still a friend. Kind of ignited a passion in me. I didn't immediately go to college right after high school. I spent a year working as a plumber's apprentice, thinking I was going to be a person in the trades. I wanted to buy a house in Santa Barbara. Even then, housing prices were skyrocketing. And I thought, hey, getting a job and making a good living right away out of high school is a clear path to being able to maybe stay in the community. And I did that work, very, very hard work. First day on the job, I showed up at Hope Elementary School or Monte Vista Elementary School. And they were putting in a sewer line from the school to the street. And the ditch was about 10 feet deep. And the guy handed me a shovel that says, it's got to be 1/4 inch to the foot all the way from the school to the street. We'll come back at the end of the day, see how good you do, and we'll see if you come back tomorrow. And so I just busted and worked hard and threw a lot of dirt and got it done. And Dino Segali was the guy who worked for Ingalls Plumbing. He came back at the end of the day. We had this crusty cigar sticking out of his mouth. Great guy. And he said, "Okay, we'll let you try another day." And so I did that for about a year. And then I thought, maybe I should try college. And I went to college and then graduated from City College and went to UCSB, and then met Jack O'Connell and started on this political science political public service career, and have enjoyed every minute, met some incredible people, stories I could tell. And I just am still loving it. And like I said before, I think I have another gear, and working in the state legislature right now is a great opportunity to serve our community.
Well, I didn't know you were I know you're competitive in politics. I can tell when you want to shape a vote, but I didn't know about the sports so much, that you were so in all these different sports. You mentioned your dad, and you mentioned him a few times over the years, and I think he's probably a source of inspiration, admiration. He was the library director. Can you talk a little bit about what you learned from your dad in terms of not only your ability to read and want to read and enjoy to read, but just in terms of your leadership style and how you navigate everything you do today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about my dad, because he was very influential. My mom as well. My mom is still alive. She lives in the house I grew up in. She's 92 years old and is doing fabulously well. She's an artist and a really connected social person. She's actually my strongest Republican supporter. So I'm really proud of that. But my dad had a very complicated job because he was the library director for both the city of Santa Barbara and the county of Santa Barbara. That's kind of a unique role. It doesn't exist today. There's different people doing those things now. So, and in addition to working with the city council and the board of supervisors, and at that time, the city of Santa Barbara really ran all the libraries in the county. So there were all the different city councils that he's had to report to, and then all the friends of the libraries for those individual communities. So this incredible network of supporters and friends of libraries that all have their own complicated needs and pressures and interests in the system. And he would describe in great detail how much time it took for him, to work through that and to develop a consensus and collaborate with people. And, there's nothing that can replace time and commitment. And he put in the time and was committed to that work. And the result was, a regional library system that was one of the best in the country. And during his tenure, he helped build the East Side branch library. It didn't exist. He got the funding and got that project approved, built the Goleta branch library, and renovated the downtown branch library. So really significant infrastructure investment improvements. And I was impressed by that. And I've always kind of focused not just on libraries, but on public infrastructure investments as part of my career, because I realized and understood at a really young age, these things last, they last beyond a career. They are become an asset for the community that people can be proud of and can use for generations. And the opportunity to create those is not often. And when you have that chance, you need to jump into that space and run hard. And that's something I worked really hard at both my job at the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments with the Measure A transportation measure to invest in our communities for 30 years in transportation projects. Measure B, which was the Open Space Clean Creeks initiative at the City of Santa Barbara, hundreds of acres of open space as a result of that, my leadership on that issue. And then Measure C at the City of Santa Barbara with the sales tax increase from a couple of years ago that generates $22 million a year, that's improving streets and sidewalks and roads and providing money for homeless services. These concrete, real life, practical solutions that deliver results is what I get the most satisfaction out of helping bring about. And I want to take that experience and apply it directly in Sacramento.
Yeah. So let's, do you remember the days when I started at City Hall? Probably not. I remember them.
No, I do. Absolutely. Yes.
You were on the council, and I was a couple years at the News Press, and then, I'm covering City Hall, and it was so fun back then. I mean, it was so much fun. It was fun when an elected official would say good job. It was fun when they would yell at you, like the fights I had with Dr. Secord over the years, like I will remember those forever. He was right most of the time, sometimes he was a bit of a little too strong, but those moments for a young reporter where you're sort of learning the beat, learning the personalities. And there's a lot of stories I wrote that I probably wouldn't write today. I'd say those are insider baseball, and you and 12 other people care, but the real public doesn't, and so we all grow. But I just want to sort of talk a little bit about, like, we always talk about tension on the council, right? And there's divisiveness, and there's going to be a swing vote, and where's this? It's always that way, right? It's always been that way in Santa Barbara. I mean, do you remember those days when we had Marty and Ia, and was it Roger and Rusty? And I mean, I don't, like you served for like 8 years, but what do you recall about those days on the council? And you actually served before I was covering the beat, but when you look back at that time, what do you think?
Some of the things that just immediately popped to mind was Tom Roberts, who's a good friend still. He was a really interesting council member. He liked to make speeches and liked a little bit to grandstand a bit. And Tom and Harriet Miller would clash often over that, because Harriet was about as no nonsense as you could possibly be. She wanted the meetings to run efficiently and get the train into the station on time. And when Tom would tangent, and make long-winded speeches, and Gil Garcia would occasionally do that too, because Gil's an architect and a visionary and has really broad, expansive ideas about development issues and things. So when the tangents would happen during the meeting, Harriet was sitting next to me, or I remember specifically, I think it was the mayor pro tem, so I was sitting next to her. She would kick me in the shin under the dais and mutter under her breath, "Make a motion, Gregg." And so that was my job, was to move things along when Tom and Gil got a little bit too verbose.
Oh my goodness, that is so funny. Yeah, I mean, we talk about, like, remember, like, Anna Marie Gott, right? Like, so she's like a frequent public commentator, and everyone's like, oh man, they have their strong opinions on her. But I mean, we were around when Bruce Rittenhouse, remember? Yep. You knew I was going to mention him, right? Like, he's like Bruce. Say what you want about Anna Marie Gott, but Bruce would go in there and do the same thing in person. And he was popular. He had this base, and I'm sure you were the recipient of a few of his public attacks too,
Another funny story with that is I was on a cruise to Mexico. I think it's the first time I'd been on a cruise in my life. We go to Puerto Vallarta, and I'm there in the plaza. Bruce has moved from Santa Barbara to Puerto Vallarta, and there he is holding court in the plaza downtown with a group of people around him, I think from the cruise ship, and he was talking to them, and I just couldn't stop myself from going up and saying, "Hey Bruce, how you doing? How's Mexico?" And he just burst into the biggest smile, and we hugged and laughed. And miss Bruce. He's definitely one of Santa Barbara's best characters.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of communities, they have those characters, but Santa Barbara's just got this incredible high level of people who care about what's happening, and it's easy to marginalize them, but at the end of the day, they care, they have strong opinions, and they come at it from a perspective, and it makes things better, right? Then can you imagine all these meetings where nobody would show up and no one would talk? That's no fun.
Well, and that's not necessarily the case everywhere. This is a county where people do care. That it's not easy to stay here. You have to work hard to survive in a very expensive place like Santa Barbara County. And as a result, people are committed to making it better and making it and improving it. And there's been generations of folks, going back 100 years, who've all vested time in community endeavors, and we all benefit from that. And so, our role in this moment in history is to do our part today, but there are folks coming down around the corner who are going to take over the mantle and are going to take it that much further. And I know our community is going to continue to be a leader in so many different ways, because there's a great generation of leadership coming up.
Yeah, definitely. You took a break from the council for public service. You did your time, you were done, you went and did other things, and then you came back. Can you just spend a couple words talking about why you got out of it and then decided to get back in? And, we all go through our life changes, and so talk to me a little bit about what was happening there.
I got out of politics because I had hit the term limits clock. So I could only serve those 2 terms in a row, had to take a break. And then when I did take a break, I really engaged in our family business. We were running Transitions Preschool. My former wife and I owned and operated that business for 20 years. And it was a passion project and a labor of love and just an incredible opportunity. I was building stuff on the weekends and doing the business part of the business and even helping out with the childcare when she was sick or staff couldn't make it and things, and just a really rewarding time. Very proud of that. That facility, that childcare center still exists now. It's run by storytellers. So it serves children whose families are experiencing homelessness. And it's just a wonderful place to this day. And I every once in a while, I'll peek over the fence and have memories of that. But I noticed that I was watching public access TV more and more and watching council meetings. And I found myself kind of yelling at the TV a couple times and saying, well, I think I have something still in the tank. I probably should get back in. This isn't productive. Nobody in my house wants to hear me yelling about council business. So I ran and was glad I did, because I just like this work. And, the opportunity to serve presented itself, and the chance to serve on the Board of Supervisors, and now this opportunity too. So I've been very fortunate, but I work hard at this work. The past experiences that I have help inform the present fights that I'm engaged in, that are all aimed at a vision of the future that I want to help achieve in our community for my neighbors and friends and family and everybody that lives in our county. And I think what we're doing in Santa Barbara County has a lot of resonance with what the state of California needs to be doing to protect the environment, have a good economy that's creating good jobs, that respects the natural resources of the place and values education and public safety. We've got all the challenges that are facing the state of California are mirrored here in Santa Barbara County, and the solutions to those can be found. And I think the practical, real life things that we're doing to address homelessness, affordable housing, public health, public safety. And so I want to be in the room in Sacramento helping make those decisions, because the resources and the constraints that the county operates, that city governments operate, are largely determined in Sacramento. And I think it's important to have somebody with my experience up there helping set the table for us.
Yeah, Gavin Newsom obviously was the focus of the recall attempt, and he beat that pretty handily, although there was a time in the polls where it didn't look that way, but things shifted. And by the time the election came, he was, clearly gonna, not get recalled. Do you have any thoughts on sort of this stuff related to masks and, closing the economy, keeping it open? That it seems like as though that issue is going to continue indefinitely. We have the Omicron variant, and now it's gotten, the cases have gone down. Who knows what the next thing is? There's this, businesses don't like Gavin Newsom because of what happened. Now Gavin Newsom is going to, he's ending the mask mandate. Schools are still you still got to wear a mask in schools. Do you have any, are you looking forward to that? It's like being a part of that conversation on the statewide, sort of public policy. How do you see yourself playing into these issues that are so personal to people at a time of COVID? I mean, COVID's not going to go away and, after November, right? It's still going to be around in some form.
Yeah, this is, the toughest thing that any of us, I think, in our lives have had to deal with. I was talking with my former mother-in-law, who's 93 years old, and I asked her, you were a child in the Depression, you're a teenager in World War II, all of the recessions and the difficulties, the wars that have happened then, how does this pandemic stack up to those experiences in your lifetime? And she said, this is easily the hardest thing. For the first year of the pandemic, we couldn't get together. We couldn't hug each other. There was no, physical comfort for the trauma and the anxiety that we're all experiencing. So this is a very serious thing that we weren't prepared for, that I don't know that we have frankly responded adequately to, and we don't know where the end is. But I do think now, after 2 years and the experiences that we've had and the things we've learned, that we're closer to the end than we are to the beginning. And I think that it is appropriate to be moving away from the mask mandate at this point in time. Hopefully, we're not going to see another surge that comes from that. If there is another variant, we might have to revisit that. I think there has been a consistent critique about a pandemic response that says, you're moving the goalposts all the time. Well, that's true because the challenge moves all the time. And if you try to do the same thing when the facts are different, you're making a mistake. So, what we're saying now today, mark my words, but it may have to change depending on what happens with a potential future variant. But right now, cases are plummeting to the point where they were in early December, where we were very, very close, to dropping the mask mandate at that time. And what we know now is obviously that Omicron is not as virulent as Delta and the other strains. So the consequences on public health are less. It's not zero. We've got deaths happening every day. There's still a danger, and folks have to be careful and use their own risk assessment to decide for themselves. When the mask mandate goes away, I suspect lots of people will continue to wear masks, and people will limit their contact with other folks. But there will be some who say, enough is enough, and I'm gonna do this now. So I think what we've learned from this pandemic is that we need to invest more in public health so that we're better prepared for the next event and for the resolution of this event, and that there have been tremendous inequities in the investment historically in public health. There are many communities who have suffered much more significantly from the pandemic than others. You just simply, the people who have to go to work as opposed to the people who are able to stay home and protect themselves. That's just a gross inequity. And that's something we're going to have to think about in the future, is that how does that fall on one class of people versus another? And so there are many, many questions and many, many things we have to unravel and figure out to do better in the future. But the most obvious one that has to be said is that the partisan ideological imprint that has been layered onto this public health emergency has been enormously destructive. And I think we have to, as a country, figure out how to detangle that. When I was chair of the board and I was communicating to the public, I made a very conscious decision to not criticize President Trump and his decisions, which, obviously in hindsight were significant and we're still suffering from, because I was trying to communicate to every single person in Santa Barbara County to pull people together, to get everybody to understand that if we work together, we wear the mask, we get vaccinated, that is the path to have the most protective environment for everybody. And, unfortunately, that intent and that goal, as laudable as it was, didn't work because the context was already set by the national leader of our country, who injected ideological elements into that public health response. And we're struggling ever since, and we're uniquely struggling. There's look around at the rest of the world. What other resource, revenue, financially rich country has done a worse job in trying to communicate the need to get vaccines? The United States is uniquely bad in that respect. And it's unfortunate. And I think it can translate directly back to the very first statements from the president about the situation. And I don't think any other Republican president in history would ever have handled this circumstance the same way. And I don't expect any president in the future to handle it the way it was handled this way. We're gonna do better because we're not gonna have that kind of dissonant voice, and we're gonna be more united, and we're gonna be more effective as a result.
Yeah. And you just said more in 5 minutes there than a lot of people say in an hour when talking about that issue. So, I mean, that's just a good example of just how deeply you think about these issues. Hey, I'm going to ask you one more policy thing and then we'll wrap up here. But, SB 9 housing, you're going to be in that sort of situation where you're stuck because all the local people are like, Greg, you need to advocate for us, right? And then you're going to, if you win, you're going to be in the state legislature and you're going to be sort of focused on the policies of the state and trying to get more housing for people, for renters, more affordable housing of all types, really. So what are your thoughts on sort of that push and pull between local control versus statewide mandates, and how do we get more housing at a time when local communities haven't really done, I guess, what they've needed to, or Santa Maria has, I guess, but, not some other communities. How do you approach that when it's forces colliding from state versus local?
Well, I think that the experience that the city of Santa Barbara had with the redevelopment agency affordable housing set-aside funds, those monies were available, is a unique story that needs to be shared in Sacramento. And I'm the perfect person to bring that experience to light there, because what the city was able to do over 30 years of redevelopment agency funding was, with predictable, reliable dollars that came through that funding stream, build 15% of the rental stock in the city of Santa Barbara that was, publicly created through the redevelopment agency and the housing authority, and also inclusionary zoning strategies at the time. And those people are the backbone of our community, and they're living in units that are going to exist forever. And that is not an accident. That was a super intentional policy decision. And there was a reliable funding source to make that happen. When the excesses around the state of California with redevelopment agencies came to light, the legislature was appalled, rightly so. There were many local governments who were not using those redevelopment agency dollars appropriately. Santa Barbara was not one of them, unfortunately. We were probably one of the best examples of how you can do it right. But the legislature eliminated that whole program because of those excesses. And the casualty of that is we don't have that funding stream for affordable housing. I want to put that back. That seems like a very practical, reasonable solution to the housing crisis that's being faced by every community. Give local governments reliable, predictable money to build affordable housing units, and then get out of the way and let them do it. I'm skeptical of these the state mandates that are trying to rezone and drive the production of units. That may help on the margins, but even the advocates for those project programs think that there's a relatively modest boost. It's not going to solve the problem, and there probably is no silver bullet. It needs a lot of different approaches to be sustained over time to make a difference. We're just not building enough housing units. The population is growing. That supply-demand imbalance is tough. And we have that same dynamic here in Santa Barbara County. The university, unfortunately, has not built the housing units that they promised under their long-range development plan. So there's a gap of about 3,500 units that students need in housing. And that impact, that demand that hasn't been fed by supply, is rippling through the entire community, from Carpinteria, all the way out to Goleta. The rental market is unnaturally tight and rents are going up, and people are suffering because the university hasn't made its commitment. So, all these things fit together. We got to collaborate. We got to work together. We got to stop, yelling about what we shouldn't do and focus in on what we should do. And that's what I'm going to bring to Sacramento. And there's only 3 legislators that represent Santa Barbara County: Monique Lamone, Steve Bennett, and myself, potentially. We're going to have really clear examples of success to have a chance to change the conversation, to be less focused on the Bay Area and LA. But we've got some really specific examples of success that we can share. And I hope that will make a difference.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of people are looking forward to you being in Sacramento. It's not a done deal. Anybody can run, I guess, still, but long overdue for sure. If you do win successfully, if you successfully win that seat. Last question, most important question of the day. Some people will listen to this and watch this before the Super Bowl. You got to be rooting for the Rams, right, Greg?
Oh, absolutely. I got my Matthew Stafford jersey in the closet. But I must say, I got that jersey. I went down to the game when they played the Cardinals, wearing my mask and vaccinated and everything. And he played terribly, threw 3 interceptions. They lost bad. And so I was almost ready to throw the jersey away. But I'm back on the bandwagon. I'm going to be wearing it. Go Rams. They're going to win.
I mean, it has to be divine intervention. They're playing the Bengals. Come on.
The Bengals are good, though. I mean, it's not a done deal. That Burrow
could have been the Chiefs. It would have been
that would have been worse, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a game, and I know you're a lifelong LA fan. Lakers, Rams. I'm a huge Rams fan. I love the Kurt Warner years. I didn't care that they moved. They were still my team. When they came back, I'm like, yes, we brought them back. So maybe it'll be a good day for both of us there.
I hope so. Let's definitely not talk about the Lakers. That's not going so great right now.
And you're not even a fan. You're like, you could be a reporter on them. I mean, you're just like textbook on all that stuff. But hey, Supervisor Hart, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk. It's always a pleasure. When I think of my career, I think of you because you've been there the whole time that I've been reporting. And I appreciate all the knowledge you bestow on the public and all the times you help me out with a quote or clarification, just information to make my stories and the journalism better. And, good luck to you as you go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Just a pleasure working directly with you and being on your show and talking with your audience. It's just, this is the best part of my job is when I get to talk to people about things I'm passionate about. So thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Take care. Good luck.